Today's lesson, level 2 and trend lines. Level 2 is going to be brief. People ask me about level 2. More so I'm using, E-Trade Pro level 2. When I did use it, I don't use Thinkorswim hardly at all. If I have a level 2 pulled up, I'm kind of pulling. I know it's a second or two delayed, but I'm kind of scrolling over to Dex and looking at his level 2 from E-Trade Pro, or I'm looking at, I have my level 2 pulled up from Lightspeed. But how I trade and use level 2, and of course we'll get into trend lines, which to me even more so is super important and more profitable than just looking at the level 2 all the time. But the level 2, essentially, like Dex says, it's just a good, essentially scale of what the stock's doing at that time and period, right? Where there are a lot of support is, where a lot of buyers are coming in, where a lot of sellers are coming in. Now, where that comes in crucial, and as you saw me and I was silent as a bug earlier, was when I was into my CNET trade, right? You heard me trying to get in. I wasn't feeling it really at first. I was looking at that level 2 from Lightspeed, looking at this essentially, going, do I have support? Do I have resistance, or people, that are about to just cloud me with, essentially it's going to just, everyone's selling off. Is everyone selling or is everyone buying? So earlier, it's kind of that same area, but say if it was instead, of course, 482, it was 380 or 72, just kind of change the lettering around here, but still same kind of price range, right? So I see the stock coming down and I see this on the bid size. I see 4,000 shares essentially at 482. I see over 7,000 shares at 481. Over 9,000, even more 9,000 shares essentially at a price, and I meant that messed that up there, but a price of 479.50. So essentially, overall right here, I have 21,000 shares. 21,000 shares that are being bought up at that 380 area essentially. As in, buyers like me are coming in, seeing that support there. They're loving that. They're wanting that bounce. That bounce is about to be had. And then over here on the bid side, you see this. You see about a 3-cent gap, which is great. So sellers are wanting to sell here. And this is it. This is all you have to push back through, essentially. This is it. From 485 to 490, you have, 2,000 shares, essentially, right around there? That's, a little over. That's nothing. You're going to push right back up to $5 before you know it. That's what you want to see. That's what you want to see on a level 2. This is what you don't want to see if you're buying. You don't want to get in here at 482, and this is your 480, or meaning, like remember earlier about 372, and see this, and this is what I was looking for, and I'm glad I didn't see it, where you see a lot of, essentially, what? No one's really buying here, and everyone's about to take even more shares off their plate, off their platter, and it's going to collapse even more. You've got 24,000 shares literally right here at 485. Then you've got a few hundred more here, stacking their way up, over around the 490 area. But 485 alone, look how many people are wanting to get dumped this off there at 485, and how many people are trying to buy around that area? No one. So what's that usually lead to? Usually more of a fall, a sell-off. So team, I can't stress that enough. When Dex trading, when I'm trading, that's the main thing we're using the level 2 for, is glancing over, studying where that mob's moving into, where that buying, that selling is coming in. They're over here on the ass. They're wanting to sell. They're wanting to get rid of it. If they're all over here like they were on the, on the previous slide like this, and they're all up here and they're wanting to buy, most likely it's going to bounce, especially when you look over here and it's not nearly as strong. Even if you saw, say, not fully loaded up, but say you saw like 5,000 here and then 500, and but it was more so you saw like 20,000 shares versus only say 5 or 10 here. What's going to happen? Well, at 20,000 shares, usually that's going to beat 10,000 shares, right? And usually going to fly and push right back through that. So that's what you want to see when you're looking at the level 2. Just kind of glancing back and forth, seeing where your support is, where your resistance is. Now your trend lines, very simple, team. Put them in, trade them. We will see these all year round. They will not stop coming. They will continue to come. We will play trend lines until the end of stocks. I promise you that. There will never be a time when we are not putting trend lines in on stocks. Because why? Stocks are going to continue to move up. They're going to what? They're going to form a trend, a line, essentially. That's why the trend line. So sometimes they're up, and we'll get to the downtrends. But most times when we're looking at stocks, because most of us in chat are buying, we're not I shouldn't say not selling. We're going to sell. We're not shorting. We're not going to try to short the stock. We're going to buy most of the time. Most people are buying in this chat. So what are we doing, team? What makes the most logical sense when you put these lines in? Now, some are like this, where it's hitting the perfect bottom, and on these two, it may take a quick little dip below on this, on certain dips are my point on the trend line. That's fine. Some will go what? A tad above it. So it kind of works out what? Beautifully. So you see a bounce right here on it. That starts the trend line. A bounce above it. A bounce below it. A bounce on it. evenly kind of distributing, literally, essentially, right, the trend line. Not that happens every time, but it's just beautiful to see that happen. That's going to happen. You're not going to always, hey, right on the trend line. Hey, right on the trend line. Sometimes you're going to get a little dip below. Sometimes you're not going to get right on the trend line. It's going to squeeze before it even gets there. The mob moves in, essentially. So use the trend line to your advantage as much as you can. Now, we're going to see this on so many different stocks. I mean, these are just different stocks throughout the year. I've put new ones in, so that way there's different months of different stocks. But here's another play. Again, bounced on it, bounced a little bit below it. Now we're bouncing completely on it perfectly. Bounced a little bit below it. But again, as I said, especially when trend lines team? They last 1. Now that we're up to 2 hours long, it doesn't matter if it's completely straight up or if it's more horizontal like this. It's going most likely to crack. Like Triple D we're looking at today. Even though that trend line's kind of further down, it's getting a little bit overextended. It's most likely going to crack that trend line. You just can't hold trends forever. It's just not going to happen. I mean, the few of the world of Teslas, so you get my point. There are some that, yes, that defy the odds and just continue to go crazy. But most times, 9 times out of 10, you're going to see what? A test. Well, this, I guess, would be your first test, but a bounce. A bounce. It's testing right in weight. No, finally we squeeze off of it. And even when we come back to it, you'd think maybe we'd get another bounce. But we've been riding this, for about an hour now. They're not all the same. No, in 2 hours in when it's going to crack. There's never a set timetable of when these are going to finally crack. But I will tell you this, as I've yelled 100 times a day, and will about any time about my shorting lesson when I get into it next week, is my good sweet steak burger and fries I'm going to have here in a little bit. I can bet you that when you crack these trend lines, no matter how steep it is, you're going to get a good short opportunity. Now, it may be like this, where it, like Neil's talked about, where it's a quick one. It may come right back up and then push through. But every time you crack a trend line, as you did here, this was about a 40-ish area crack. Look where it goes down to. 50, 18.70 even. You don't want a 70-cent drop? You're not good with that? Even 50 cents? You're not cool? Okay, cool, fine. If you don't like 50-cent plays, that's fine. But I'll take those any day of the week. And as you can see, this drop from around 19.30 to 40 area all the way down to around the 18, close to 60-ish area. I'm sure, yes, does get a bounce, but it keeps cracking, finds its way, you get my point, back into the $17. So, and I'll get into more of that in a second, but all these that we've seen, every time we crack a trend line, we are set for a good short opportunity. Now, here's one that's like 2 different trend lines. We're going to see these kind of like today with Triple D. We're going to have this initial slow and steady trend line that's way down yonder, way down here. We'll have that one right here. Then we're going to have when we start pushing and extending and exploding off of the trend line. And yes, we can have 2 trend lines, team. I want people to know that. There's not just, there's just 1 trend line. No, there can be 2. There can be 3 sometimes even maybe. But definitely I've seen 2, more so. Obviously, more is usually we have the 1. But then 2 is kind of the second. Obviously, the second most we'll see occurrences of 2. Like we are here, and I just want to bring in the 2. That way you get a better idea and, a vision of the fact that we can have the 1 trend line, which is beautiful, right, team? Look at this 1 long trend line that, yes, sometimes they do last 2 hours and, yes, can explode. Rarely. Let me tell you, rarely. You don't see this that often, right? How often are we like, this play's just creeping, and then around lunch we just see it explode? Not often, right? We do, but rarely. So then again, put in the second trend line when it starts forming the said trend line. Then again, when you crack it, we haven't cracked this one yet, which is fine, but we are going to crack this one for sure, 100 trillion%, because it's so steep. I mean, we went from 850 up plus right over 11 in a matter of about 30 minutes, where a stock took 3 hours to move from 9 o'clock till noon here. It moved from 650 was that? 650. Yeah, 650 at 9. And then at noon, when we're finally kind of moving, we're only at 8. So $2, which is decent, $2 in 3 hours. Or do you want $3+ essentially in 30 minutes? So you get there, close to $3-ish in 30 minutes. So once again, mob, and that's a quick little small lesson on volume where it kind of comes in with these trend lines and can get overextended, but look at that volume. No volume, mob, crazy, awesome, push, thus the push and the extension. But again, back to trend lines, wait for your trend line to crack for a short. Now, a lot of people, maybe short here. You probably could get in, these upper shadows at 10. More upper shadows at 10.50. Good shorts to be had. 1050, 1075 back to what? Literally about 950. 1075 feel, or I should say that would have been about a 1040-ish feel. 10, any over 10, but definitely a pullback. 1075-ish feel, definitely a pullback. But what? To the trend line. That's what you have to realize. That's where the support's going to be. That's where you need to get out and don't let it squeeze back up on you. Then, which I'll get into on my short lesson next week. And then that's why I like to short what? Trend line cracks. It is the safest short. This is your short area right here, team. So that's why you'll always, where's a good short area? Where's a good short area? Well, of course, $10, and of course, any upper shadows you see, especially when you build 3 or so in a row, or even right here, a nasty one at 11. But just be safe and wait for the $11 crack. That, or the $11, but the trend line crack. When it cracks that trend line, and it does immediately, look at the pullback you get. So even if you're filled at 1045, 1050, the trend line really was probably around 1065, 1070. 1050, you're golden. Golden. So don't forget, 2 trend lines can happen. And then always, I'm telling you, wait for that trend line to short it when it cracks. And then again, just put these trend lines in. This is just another example. This one's from September. Funny enough, our old, gonna get into coronavirus news play, Kodak. Remember, KODK. Getting into, this is before it went bananas, or it may have been afterward. I can't remember. But again, just putting trend lines in just are so simple. 1 bounce, 2 bounce, close to a 3rd bounce right at the opening bell and go skyrocketing to a new high day. 4th bounce when it comes down to it. 5th bounce right here even. So, and then eventually I know it does, and it cracks off here and it cracks the trend line. But that is as close to horizontal as you're going to get as a trend line, and yet it cracks and gives you a decent shorting opportunity. Now get to just a couple little downtrend plays, just so you can see. How about a buy for the downtrend break, right? Here's your downtrend. We were looking at it earlier for, what was it? CNET. And now I think it finally did break the downtrend, which we'll get into. And it was a downtrend break. I looked at it. Moved right up to what? Exactly what I thought it would, the VWAP. Same thing here. CERX, crazy mover early on. So when you get a downtrend break, you're going to get maybe you get my point. CNET, not the craziest of movers earlier, a decent move, but nothing like going from 95 cents all the way up to what, 275 or whatever. That's a pretty huge move. Most of the mobs here. Well, later in the day when this really does form right back down, goes exactly almost kind of back down to where it came from or close to, when we squeeze and pop out of the downtrend here, now that it was the mob play earlier, it has more of a potential, unlike CNET, to push through the VWAP, form this bull flag / pennant flag right here, and then just continue to keep forming them and push, push, and push. And as you can see, then form a trend line, which I may have, maybe not, but then another trend line that you could form on the way up. Look at this. So we break the downtrend, beautiful buy. That's your buy area for a push to the VWAP, and most people should. You're in at what, 170-ish for the downtrend break, up to 220-ish area for the VWAP. That's 50 cents. Scale out most of your shares there. I know this goes to 4. Most times it's not going to. I mean, how many stocks do we see, do this? Not a lot. We see a few crazy stocks and crazy plays and spikes, but a lot of the time, just take your profit, take your gains. If it continues to push and do this, if anything, just get back in on these breaks of the wedges with these, flag breaks, with the volume, with the mob. But again, downtrend break, beautiful for a buy and a push. Look at the volume too. Come back in here. Look at that volume spike and push, 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 push. And again, play the trend line here. And again, even when the trend line broke, if I would have put a line in right here, look where it broke right here. Broke somewhere in these red candles, so short would have been anywhere around the 410 mark. This falls back to 375 easy. So again, it wasn't the craziest of shorts, but shorts to be had. And again, I just kind of drew this in. It could be multiple things. Why it kind of break, it could be, and that's why I kind of pulled in and drew this myself, a double whammy, where it comes down and finally, like unlike CNET earlier, it could have been multiple things. CNET was a different reason, but it hits, my point being, say the 200-day moving average, hits the VWAP, hits the old support area, say of $2, or $2.15, $2.25. Then at that same time gets the volume candles come in here and push through the downtrend. Beautiful for the buy. And of course, again, I think, that's right. This is the most recent one where I added it. CREX. Look how many lessons CREX gives this team. CREX. 5 lessons within it. Flag wedge setups, the sandwich area, trend lines, VWAP support bounce, the double whammy. And I mean, which in some of those are multiple, even more. So trend lines, you could put trend line buy, trend line crack for a short, trend line or downtrend break for a buy. So let's just so you get my point. There's multiple. So let's get into it. And this is the last one. It's kind of a fun one to get into. Gotta love when you can break down 5 lessons essentially within a stock. That means that stock went bananas and had a lot to do. First, look at all these flags and all these flags. So I love flag wedge setups. Everyone's got to notice them flags, wedges everywhere. Trend lines. Look at the trend line buys. Buy on the trend line. Buy on the trend line bounce. Buy on the trend line bounce. Short the trend line. Short the trend line crack. Okay, now we've got a downtrend. Let's buy the downtrend break. Okay, let's buy, the uptrend. Here, trend line buys. Trend line buys. So there's all your trend line plays. The sandwich area. And here's where I actually bought and got in on this play. Missed this flag, essentially. It was already up a lot. I'm like, I was kind of chasing here. And I know I got to get one more bounce in. I bought in on the upper bun of my sandwich. So here's your upper bun, or I should say your lower bun, the lower bun of your sandwich, upper shadows, this is resistance, so your lower bun. Once you break above resistance, so old resistance equals new support, as we're bouncing on the lower bun, equals your upper bun. So I bought on the upper bun, bounces off this old resistance area and pushed into the new high, sold it all. But then here could have been your sandwich area and a VWAP buy and a double whammy all in one. So you get 3, 4, 5 right here on the VWAP buy. So you get the sandwich buy, you get the VWAP bounce buy, and that's a double whammy, baby. So I love when you have plays like this with a lot to go over and kind of show you all these different strategies, patterns that you can buy within one play. And there you go. There's how I kind of look into level 2, and definitely how I love me some trend lines. Got the lesson in. There you go, team. Hopefully that helps you out. With trend lines, especially, I know that we're going to see these all the time. I mean, even right here, like I said, team, we have a trend line with DDD that is continuing to push. But what do we also have? Now we're starting to form a secondary trend line that, if it just tested, may crack. If that gets close to cracking, or if it does crack, it's going to come what? It's going to come back down to the old trend line. So we're going to have this new trend line set in right here, which easily could crack back to the old one.